What's up, YouTube? I'm Mike. Today, we're back talking about one of my favorite steroids ever created, and that is Masteron. Masteron is talked about in every single bodybuilding circle, and it seems to be possibly, maybe next to Trenbolone, it seems to possibly maybe be the least or the most misunderstood steroid on earth. I have been running this in large volumes for a very long time now with fantastic results, and through my most recent experimentation I have discovered a side effect to Masteron that I have not ever heard anyone talking about. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Masteron is considered to be one of the safest hormones that you can run. You hear a lot of people in the bodybuilding community talk about steroids and neurotoxicity. This is something that you definitively hear, attributed to Trenbolone. The Trenbolone can turn your brain to mush, that it can, it does all of these really negative things to your mental capacity. Unfortunately, from my very recent experimentation, I have found out that Masteron might, in certain people, that's the case. In certain people, Masteron might be one of the most dangerous drugs that you can run because it seems to lead to full-blown mental retardation. That's right. I know this is going to be shocking to a lot of you. Probably more than a little bit nerve-wracking if you've been running this drug at all. I've been scouring the internet just before making this video, just kind of refreshing my memory of all of the things that have been said about Masteron. If you get online and you type in "is Masteron an AI," you better have 4 or 5 hours to invest, because for every 3 people who says it's absolutely not an AI, somebody else is going to come along and say that it is an AI. Somebody's going to say that it's a SERM. Todd Lee, who is famously using, who has talked about this and is running a protocol similar to mine, has claimed that Masteron, what did he say, it makes you less sensitive to estrogen, that you can tolerate more estrogen if you are taking Masteron, and that if you are, for example, using Deca or Nandrolone, that you will be able to tolerate less estrogen. I think what he's saying here is that for the same given amount of E2 in your system, with Masteron in play, you're going to be able to tolerate a higher level of E2 without getting side effects. And with Nandrolone in the equation, that you're going to experience side effects of E2 even at lower concentrations of E2. I know there's a lot of Todd Lee fans in the audience. Please, if I mischaracterize that, then you can set me right in the comments. The Anabolic Doc has claimed that Masteron has anti-estrogenic effects. TRT and Hormone Optimization have claimed, that's another channel on YouTube that has claimed that Masteron has anti-estrogenic effects. He goes so far as to saying that you have to be very careful when you're running Masteron, because you could crash your testosterone and you could crash your estrogen into the toilet. This is actually an experience that I made a video about one day. There's a video on my channel where I had dropped back to 200 milligrams of testosterone. I had been running 500 milligrams of testosterone for a long time. I dropped back to 200. I was running some mast, and I started to feel what I thought were the effects of low estrogen. It's distinctly possible that that is what I was feeling. The problem just is that it's not the Masteron causing it. Masteron is not crashing anyone's estrogen into the toilet, and today I'm here to prove that to you. This is why I'm saying that one of the side effects that Masteron seems to have is that it seems to make some people mentally retarded. You can tell which one of, you can tell who is experiencing this side effect. If you get onto Reddit or YouTube or social media and you read a post by somebody who says, for example, they're taking 500 milligrams of test and 500 milligrams of Masteron and they don't need an AI. that the Masteron is offsetting the amount of estrogen produced by 500 milligrams of testosterone. And you'll hear all kinds of ratios, right? Most people will make the claim that 200 milligrams of Masteron is not really enough to do anything. You need like 300 at a minimum. A lot of people will tell you that Masteron is not a good muscle builder, that it doesn't have any place in any cycle. This seems to be something that more and more of us are starting to disagree with. Todd Lee and I seem to actually be in a similar state now where we're both running very low doses of testosterone and using Masteron as our primary anabolic agent to prevent all of the problems that, you know, DHT and extra conversion of aromatase into estradiol can cause. The only place I have, believe me, I have not studied Todd's videos at length. I disagree that it has anything to do with sensitivity. And again, this is in one. This is just in my body, but because I have fallen prey to the same kind of myths that I think are perpetuated in the community, I'm going to basically give you what I consider to be the proof, the evidence that Masteron has possibly zero, most likely zero, zero aromatase inhibition. Masteron is not an AI at all, period. And it doesn't even really make sense for it to be a SERM. The reason that I am so abundantly confident of this now is because I'm in a use case that I think is relatively atypical. Often what you see in the community is guys talking about ratios. What ratio of primo to testosterone do they need to run to not have high E2? Spoiler alert, there isn't one. You guys all have high E2. What ratio of Masteron to testosterone do you need to run to not need an AI? Again, spoiler alert, you guys all have a high E2. Masteron is not an AI. Now, how do I know this empirically and factually? And I guess to be fair, to be totally fair before somebody calls me out on it, I can't technically say at this point empirically, because empirically I do not have I have not gotten my blood work checked on my current protocol to know for sure where my E2 is. But I think when I explain where my symptomology that you guys can all agree, I think common sense is all we're going to need here. So currently what I am running is about 210 milligrams of Trenbolone, and that is split between Tren E and Tren Ace, what I have now come to call the Tren Twins. So I'm running Tren Twins at a combined total of 210 milligrams per week. I am running 600 milligrams of Masteron E per week. And I am running a minuscule 80 milligrams of Test C per week. Now, why am I doing this? In case you haven't watched my previous videos, for the 9 months starting about, I just started running testosterone again about 3 to 4 weeks ago. I had been running an experiment for 9 months where I was injecting zero testosterone and I was using estradiol valerate to maintain physiological amounts of estrogen. This experiment ran phenomenally well for some period of time until I began to experience symptoms that are very, very closely related to what some people call post-finasteride syndrome. I lost all of my libido and all of my sexual functionality completely. I tried a million different things to get it back. I was running high doses of DHT derivatives. I had estrogen in the mix. I added Proviron, trying to get as close to real DHT as I could get. I've got Trenbolone. I've got Cabergoline to offset the prolactin. I've got all of these things in the mix, and I had completely lost sensitivity in the skin of basically my penis had no sensitivity. I had lost the ability to orgasm generally, and I had zero libido to speak of. I was effectively neutered, for lack of a better term. I was very concerned that I had permanently damaged myself when running my triple 19 NOR experiment, when I combined mint, nandrolone, and trenbolone, which are all three 19 NOR drugs, which is when all of my major sexual problems began. I'm very, very, very happy to report that coming up on the 1 month mark of reintroducing testosterone at 40 milligrams twice a week, all of my sexual functionality has returned. My wife is celebrating from the other room. I have massive physical sensitivity. I'm not going to get into the gory details. Every single thing is functioning at the tip-top levels, and it's only continuing to get better, honestly. There's still a couple of little things I would like to dial in, but that's just me being like an extreme tweaker. Compared to where we have been, we're 98% to absolute penis perfection. Okay, so it is undeniable that in me, my experiment to replace natural testosterone with 19 nortestosterone and natural DHT with DHT derivatives did not work. It did not work. I lost all sexual functionality, and the only thing that gave it back was putting back in a physiological amount of testosterone. Now, when I started injecting the testosterone, I was still on estradiol valerate injections. So for the first week, I began tapering down my E2 injections. And then when I started feeling like I was getting a bit high, primarily because I was starting to develop gyno and I was crying almost constantly, I realized that this is the time to pull the plug on the E2 immediately. And thankfully, estradiol valerate is a very short-acting ester. It cleared my system very rapidly. And again, in the absence of blood work, going based off just the feels, the symptoms that we can feel, I am convinced that right now I am dialed into the high end of normal. I think if I go get an estradiol test, if it's a test where the range is up to like 43 picograms per milliliter, I'm guessing I'm anywhere between 30 and 40, probably. Probably not 40, but possibly. I could be slightly above the reference range, even at 80 milligrams of total testosterone a week alone. So here comes the mental retardation part. The mental retardation part is that if Masteron is an AI and I'm only running 80 milligrams of test with no aromatase inhibitor and 600 milligrams of Masteron, I should have E2 that is crushed completely into the toilet. It should be completely, totally non-existent. I don't have to go get blood work to know that my E2 is not crushed into the toilet, because I am crying at cat videos. I am crying just from looking at my daughter sometimes. I have been creeping my daughter out in this house because I have just been so I'm just so in love with my daughter, my wife right now. I'm so unbelievably emotionally available that I basically have to have a high estrogen. I have morning wood consistently every morning. Absolutely no erection problems, absolutely no libido problems, absolutely no emotional availability connection problems. Okay? None of these things would be true if I had estrogen crashed into the toilet. And if 600 milligrams of Masteron E is not enough to offset 80 milligrams of testosterone, then it doesn't offset it at all. There's no possible way you're going to tell me that you're running 500 milligrams of test and 500 milligrams of Masteron, and the Masteron is keeping your testosterone in line. It cannot possibly be had. And then there's always going to be that person who's like, well, bro, everybody's different. Okay, yeah, everybody is different, but we're not that fucking different. Okay, there's nobody on earth that I've ever heard of that can blast a gram of test and have no estrogen. Now, if they do, it's because they have a condition. They have something wrong with them. They have an aromatase deficiency. So you could argue that the amount of aromatase activity that is present in one person versus another is a very real thing. There's no doubt about that. That's why we have what we call high aromatizers, low aromatizers. You know, not everybody who takes 500 milligrams of testosterone, like me, is possibly going to need 3 milligrams of 8X, which is what I require. This is backed up by blood work. It's been confirmed on 3 different occasions. 3 milligrams of Arimidex is what it takes per week to offset 500 milligrams of testosterone. And what is remarkable about Masteron is that over the course of the last at least 2 years, I have been running 300 milligrams or more of Masteron alongside either no testosterone, testosterone in an AI, DECA and testosterone in an AI. I have run Masteron in a million different ways. And not one single time has it ever consistently changed the amount of Arimidex I needed to offset a given amount of testosterone. So for those of you who are going to say, like we should keep giving the same example, 500 milligrams of Masteron offsets 500 milligrams of testosterone. If that was true, then I could not possibly take 500 milligrams of testosterone, 600 milligrams of Masteron, and 3 milligrams of 8X and not have E2 crash completely and totally into the toilet. If Todd Lee is right, and Masteron somehow has the capacity to desensitize you to estrogen, and yet I feel high on 80 milligrams of testosterone, then again, this math doesn't add up. It would make sense. I could go a little way with Todd if he was going to say, you know, like 200, like a low dose Masteron might be affecting my low dose of testosterone. You know, but the thing of it is, at 600 milligrams of Masteron compared to 80 milligrams of testosterone, if there was any desensitization power from the Masteron, it should be erasing the tiny amount of estradiol that my body could possibly be making right now. So again, while I don't yet have numbers to back this up, I will 100% have them very soon, because I need to know exactly how much testosterone, exactly how much estrogen I'm taking, because I at this point am committed to running this long term. Kavalser in the audience, shout out to Kavalser. He made the funny claim in one of my comments like a few videos ago, where I basically said that I was doing great on low dose testosterone, low dose tren, and Masteron, and he's like, "Well, fucking congratulations! You've now arrived at the protocol I've basically been recommending since day one, minus the mint." And he's right. Kavalser is right. He has been running low dose test. He's been saying from the gate that low dose test, just enough to basically replace physiological functionality, and some Masteron for extra anabolism, maybe a tiny amount of tren for extra animalism, and what else? And of course he runs mint. But I have not thus far, I have not needed it. I'm not going to rule it out, but I have not needed it. Right now, 80 milligrams total testosterone per week seems to be making more than enough estrogen. There are 0 signs that I need any more estrogen in my body. I think what is almost certainly going to be proven to be true is that I'm going to have to slightly lower my testosterone dose in order to bring my E2 back to a really better level. I think it's possibly sliding a little high right now. So I'm going to go get blood work before I make any changes, because right now the D game is firing on all cylinders and I do not want to risk breaking anything. But I think that we can pretty much conclusively show from this admittedly N1 anecdotal data that there is no chance in hell that Masteron has any significant amount of AI or even SERM related properties, given the fact that I have such a small total possible amount of estrogen in my system right now. 600 milligrams of Masteron is either going to annihilate that or it just doesn't do it. If Masteron at 600 milligrams can't offset the E2 produced by 80 milligrams of testosterone, then, and you want to continue to try to believe that there's some number that will, then you would have to be taking like 3 grams of mast to every, say, 500, I mean, who even knows the numbers? But the mast would have to be so substantially higher than the testosterone to just be comical. I mean, again, I'm already greater than 6, my Masteron dose is already more than 6 times higher than my test dose, and I will almost certainly come back with high normal or slightly out of range E2. So guys, please, if you are going to run Masteron, be very, very, very capable. You might want to go see a shrink beforehand. You might want to get some extra medical advice if you are prone to delusions, if you are prone to psychoses, if you are the kind of person who wants to believe that you can get something for nothing, if you are the kind of person who just doesn't want to use ancillary drugs because you can't find them, you're convinced that you can get all of your answers in just needles. I don't know what the conditions of the brain have to be, but and I can't yet comment on Primo. I probably will never be able to because I can't tolerate pinning it. But as it pertains to Masteron, this drug, again in me, and maybe I'm the lone freak in this entire community, Masteron has 0 AI properties, 0 SERM properties, 0 estrogen sensitivity properties. It does nothing to estrogen in my body at all. If it did, I would still be completely and totally dysfunctional, and nothing could be further from the truth. So there you have it. I hope that this has been informative. I hope that you are not one of the poor souls in the audience that is about to find out that they are suffering from some form of serious mental condition and need to report directly to a psychiatrist, or at best to your local Quest or LabCorp, and get your estrogen checked. If you are currently running testosterone in high doses and you are convinced that Masteron in some ratio is offsetting your estrogen level, you need to go get tested. You probably need to do 2 things. You probably need to get your gear tested to make sure it's real, and get your blood work checked to make sure your E2 is not fucking sky high. Because I can tell you from personal experience that is backed up by blood work, there is a very strange paradox about estrogen and its side effects. If my estradiol creeps above normal, if the top end of the range is 40 and I have a 55, I will have full-blown gyno, weeping, crying, bloating, all kinds of side effects. But I had a case where my estradiol crept up into the triple digits, and I had little to no side effects of high estrogen. I still do not know how that's possible, but I am not the only person to report this. I have had multiple people in my Discord who were on high doses of anabolics and were convinced that Primo or some other drug was offsetting the estrogen because they were asymptomatic. They went and got tested, and they had estradiol levels greater than 90 picograms without symptoms. I don't know how that works. It's definitely something that needs to be explored. So do not believe just because you have no symptoms that your estradiol is in range. It very well possibly could be massively elevated, and you wouldn't even know. So there you have it. As always, thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.